This is the AddMaths paper from 2008 and question 5. Use calculus to find the stationary points on the curve y equals x cubed minus 3x plus 1, identifying which is a maximum and which is a minimum. First thing you need to do is to differentiate it to find its gradient. Remember, when you differentiate, this is when the power goes down. 3 comes in front of the x and I reduce the power by 1. Here, if you have a number in front of the x, it's just the number. Effectively, that was a 1 here which has come down and the power of x has gone down to 0. So we've got this expression here, 3x squared minus 3. Now, for a maximum or a minimum point, the gradient is equal to 0. So we need to put dy dx equals 0, which means 3x squared minus 3 equals 0. Think of it at a maximum or a minimum point, the tangent will be flat, so that's why we put the gradient equal to 0. So we need to solve this equation. Take that 3 to the other side, divide both sides by 3, and square root. And remember, you get plus and minus 1 here, not just a plus 1. So we've got one stationary point, maximum or a minimum, when x is equal to 1. To find whether it's a maximum or a minimum point, we differentiate a second time. The notation we use is d2y by dx squared. So I'm differentiating now my 3x cubed minus 3, which is what I had up here for dy dx. So if I differentiate this to 3, 2 times by the 3 is 6, the power on the x goes down. The 3 will disappear. So I just get 6x. And when x is equal to 1, which it is here, 6x is 6 times by 1, which is 6. If that number is positive, we have a minimum. So we have a minimum point here when x equals 1. The other possibility was x is minus 1. There's something happening there as well. Again, the d2y by dx squared, this will still be 6x. And when I substitute in the minus 1, I'm going to get 6 lots of minus 1, which is minus 6. If this result is negative, that always implies you have a maximum. So the answer to part 1, when x is 1, we have a minimum. And you need to write this down to get your full marks. And when x is minus 1, we have a maximum. If it had actually said to find the coordinates, we would then have to go and find the y values as well. But it didn't have that for this part. Part 2 of the question says we need to sketch the curve. So, the curve we are sketching is that. Okay. One thing that's always worth happening is saying, okay, what happens when x is 0, which is on the y-axis? When x is 0, y will be 0, take away 0 plus 1. So we know this goes through the point 0, 1. We know we've got a maximum here and a minimum there. Now actually at this point it would be useful to find out what the y coordinates are. So, when x is 1, substitute in here, 1 cubed is 1, minus 3 lots of 1, plus 1. 1 minus 3 is minus 2, plus 1 is minus 1. So we've got the point 1 minus 1, which is where we have our minimum. And for a maximum point, let's label that one minimum, we're going to have y equals minus 1 cubed, which is minus 1, minus 3 times by minus 1, which is plus 3, and then the plus 1, and that is 3. So it's at minus 1, 3, we have our maximum. That should now be enough to sketch the curve. We have a minimum at 1 minus 1. We have a maximum at minus 1, 3. And we know it goes through the x-axis at 0, 1. So this curve, we can say, goes up here, has a maximum there, crosses the y-axis there, and has a minimum there, and will again return back up. Okay, so that is how you can sketch that curve.